Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All the praise and thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In salutation upon Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, upon all the Anbiya, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The current media outburst about gender-based violence is a very pertinent one about how women or females are victims of such abuse. This abuse of women is a global issue, a local issue, and also an historic issue. Just look at the statistics for the global statistics on what happens to women globally. It is estimated that 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or sexual violence by a non-partner at some point in their lives. Basically, 1 in 3 women globally are affected by some form of harm by male counterparts. It's interesting, there were also some studies done within Muslim-dominated countries. And what they observed is that children who had seen their father physically abusing their mother were 3 times more likely to do the same. So it's an inbred culture that needs to be broken. If you look at it, the statistics in South Africa, just in the financial year 2017 and 2018, there were over 175,000 reported crimes against women, which is basically 20 an hour. So when we finish this khutbah today, there will be 20 women further affected by such harm. But what's very striking, when you're looking at the issue around gender-based violence and specifically around women being affected, is that it's not just a global or local issue, but there has also been a historic issue. This topic is not particularly new. What's amazing is that it was also present in the society in Makkah in which the Prophet ﷺ was sent to liberate humanity. But that form of gender-based violence was even worse. It was what we call femicide, physical killing of girl children. We see this described in Surah 17, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُكُمْ بِالْأُنثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. When news is brought to one of them, referring to the people of Makkah at that point in time, the birth of a female child, untha, his face darkens, his wajh muswaddan, becomes dark and sad, and is filled with inward grief. With shame does he hide himself from his people because of the bad news he has had. Shall he retain her and suffer contempt, or bury it in the dust? Oh, what an evil choice they decide on. So the burying of female children was a practice in Arabia. Women were not regarded well, and having a female child was almost a disaster for a family. We see similar situations in India today, where in other parts of Asia as well, where female children are actually killed at birth or in utero as well. Thankfully, alhamdulillah, this does not occur in our Muslim societies, and this femicide has been eradicated from our communities. But lesser forms of such harm to women still occur. And when we look at the verse that follows this description of what happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, to those who believe not in the hereafter applies the similitude of evil. To Allah applies the highest similitude, for He is exalted and powerful of wisdom. Can you imagine burying a child alive? A child that's a crying, young, innocent baby, being buried alive underground just because she's female. And this was the behavior of the Arabian society pre-Islam. And this verse that follows makes it very clear that there's a hereafter, and no matter how the suffering goes on, justice will ultimately be served. So even if men might get away with it in this world, the Creator will ultimately deal with them, and He'll catch up with them in the next world. However, in this audience, I'm sure that many would disagree with, would really recognize the inhumanity of such an action, would also not condone harm to women. But I think also just to remind ourselves, when we talk about women, who are we referring to? By definition, a woman is in essence the one that gave birth to all men. We come from our mothers. And therefore, abuse to women as such is really an abuse to the ones that gave birth to us. And therefore, it's a very serious matter. What I'd like to really focus on briefly today, related to this ayah on femicide, is the undertone of this verse, not the killing of the child, but more around the perceptions of individuals in society. So when he gets this news of this child, what does the verse say? He was shamed that he hid himself from his people because of the bad news. So it really speaks to attitudes. It's not really a physical abuse thing, it's a mental problem, a perceptual problem. It all determines, the outcomes really are determined by the value and respect that's accorded. And we see here there's two things. He sees this birth of a child as bad, as negative. So it's a perceptual issue. The second is that he hides himself from his community. And that really speaks to the broader community issues around stigma and how that is dealt with. When we think of this whole perception and the psychology behind community interaction, what's very clear is that when anyone is valued lower than the next, whether it be by race category, by gender, by ethnic group, the net effect of devaluing one person is the harm to that person. You find all forms of harm that come, whether through any form of oppression, be racism based on gender, a variety of other things, is often driven by an underlying factor of devaluing that person. And if women are sort of regarded as second-class citizens, if Africans are regarded as second-class citizens, the natural outcome is that respect, value, and dignity is destroyed, and therefore the overall psyche of humanity is that they treated differently. And this is what we observe in this verse that describes as femicide. They perceive the value of woman low as bad news. They fear that community stigma that will evolve. And these are important underlying things that I'd like us to really appreciate and understand when it comes to this topic of gender-based violence. Now, I'm certain that, at least alhamdulillah, femicide is not an issue in Muslim communities. But like I mentioned, there are other harms that Muslim women suffer from men. And this is sometimes due to human behavior or the psyche of that individual. But sometimes as religious teachings, some things that carry forward, they can sometimes harm women. And sometimes it's either misinterpretation or misinformation that really clouds their understanding and creates justification to harm women as such. So what I'd really like to focus on in the next 5 minutes or so is to just look at the value of women in Islam. What does the Quran teach of the value of women, their rights and respect and dignity accorded to them? The first starting point is, I think, when we often go for the nikah, we hear from the beginning of Surah Nisa, Allah created you from a single cell, and from there scattered men and women, and what we see today. So we have very common origins. Even in Surah Hujurat, Allah describes, I'll read the ayah to you. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. O mankind, we have created you from a single pair of male and female, and made you into nations and tribes that you may know each other. So we have a very common origin. Men and women serve dual roles, but we fundamentally come from the same essence. Allah subhanahu further goes on to say that in Surah Tawbah, Surah 9, verse 71, the believers, men and women, are protectors, awliya ba'd. They are protectors one of another. And goes on them will Allah pour His mercy, for Allah is exalted in power wise. This is a very telling ayah that describes the believers, men and women, as awliya to one another. They are protectors to one another, not harmers to one another. So we have a responsibility to make sure that our wives, our daughters, our mothers are protected. And likewise, they have a responsibility to go off track to bring us to the fold. Another ayah that makes it even more clear as to their rights and blessings that Allah has given them. In Surah Nisa about the woman, verse 32. To men is allotted what they earn, and to women what they earn. So they even have rights of economic independence where they can earn their own income as such. And Allah continues, but ask Allah's bounty, for Allah has full knowledge of all things. So we see that we have a similar origin. We are expected between men and women to be protected of one another. We see that we can earn independently of one another, and that wealth is a respected right. We see that in the following ayah, Surah Nisa, verse 124, Allah says, if any do deeds of righteousness, be they male or female, and have iman, they will enter Jannah. And not the least injustice will be done to them. So we see that the equality in terms of, in the eyes of Allah, is very clear. That they will both be inheritors of Jannah, and there is no necessarily a superiority of one over the other. Another ayah in Surah Al-Imran, and the Lord had accepted of them and answered them, never will I suffer the loss of the work of any of you, be you male or female, you are members one of another. So this set of ayah really provides a very clear indication of the balanced relationship between men and women in the Quran and in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's numerous examples that are given. Ayat which talk of إِنَّمَا الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, and goes on about those who fast, those who pray, those who give in charity, paralleling the male and female. And at the end Allah says, for them has Allah provided forgiveness and great rewards. So we see that this notion of distinction, at least in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not there. We need to respect and value the opposite gender, and the opposite gender likewise needs to respect and treat men in the same way. What's striking as well is the examples of women given in the Quran. Allah gives a high regard to two women in the Quran. The one is that of Maryam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam. She was actually slandered by the Jews for illegitimate relationships in having Isa alayhi salam. And she's given as an example against the contestation against her gift of Isa. And the second example is that of the wife of Fir'aun. Here we have an example of a woman who was marked out greatly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was married to Fir'aun and suffered the hardships under such an abusive man, and granted Al-Jannah and a great status of Jannah, and also respected within the Muslim history that's established in the Quran. There are other ayahs that teach us also certain rights that women have. We see in Surah Nisa, Allah says, O you believe, you are forbidden to inherit women against their will, nor should you treat them with harshness. It's interesting that historically women were, as I mentioned, the femicide would only occur because of people's attitudes and respect. If you devalue a person, then it becomes more easy and normative to treat them in a harmful way. In the other, one of the characteristics in the pre-Islamic era was they regarded women as an asset that you could transfer as an inheritance to someone else. And Allah forbids such behavior. They are independent, we've seen, they can earn, they will enter Jannah, they can be righteous, they're protectors of men like men are protectors of women. And even in divorce cases, Allah mentions, and women shall have rights similar to rights against them. So we find the Quran teaches us a lot around respect, dignity, and value of women. And I think that we really want to untie the scourge of gender-based violence, femicide done with, but all other forms of harm to our women, is how do we perceive them, how do we respect them, and this is an important element around protecting their dignity and value. We know that the Prophet has described women in very beautiful ways, describing heaven at the feet of one's mother, describing the bringing up of goodly girls, 3 goodly girls that you get to Jannah as such. So there are numerous statements around encouragement to respect, value, and treat well our women as such. I think my time is up. There's obviously other ayahs that I'd like to touch on, which deals with some of the women abuse that occurs and the justifications that are created But just to highlight that there are one or two issues that have arisen and has been largely debated about around hating of women, etc. But it's very clear when you read the context of those ayahs, and specifically in the context of all these verses that describe women and even their rights of return in terms of nushuz, they do have respected rights. There is harmony that Allah expects between men and women, and I think we need to respect women in a manner that accords them the value and see them as our mothers essentially, that gave birth to us and gave us what we have and what we know. So lastly, I think just to end off, what's really important about dealing with these issues of gender-based violence is, number one, to recognize that it does occur. It occurs in Muslim societies, it occurs in non-Muslim societies, it occurs in history, and it occurs globally. But the key issues in dealing with how women are affected is really, first of all, dealing with perception, dealing with value. If we really change our minds and attitudes about how we perceive women, that's the first start. We also need to realize that women do have rights as well. I haven't covered that today, but they have certain rights to protect them in the Quran. And we need to realize that we need to respect Allah's laws when it comes to how we deal with women as such. And lastly, I think what's important is that even in the case of divorce, we find disagreements between men and women. We find that in the subsequent verse, Allah talks of, if you fear discord, then intervene. And it's important that us as communities need to act, to intervene where people are being harmed. And today I've spoken about gender-based violence, but I think if it's any community that's affected negatively, whether it be children, whether it be women, whether it be certain ethnic groups, it becomes our responsibility to step up and number one, speak out against any injustice that might take place, but also assist those that are being harmed as well. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.